But this week is OCD Awareness Week. And John, you are very special in this occasion because you actually suffer from OCD. So, what a great moment that we get to speak to someone who's not only suffered, but has decided to give back in the most giving way. And so, this is a safe zone, everyone. We're going to be speaking about some things that could perhaps have a little trigger for anyone. So, trigger warning out there for anyone. If you need any help, please get off of the call and want you to do that. We want you to be here, but we also want you to take care of yourself. And we're going to speak more to John. We're going to talk a little bit about OCD, his own experience with OCD, how he can help you, things that he does, and his own foundation, the JCK Foundation, which is so cool. And he works with communities and schools to improve mental wellness and resilience amongst our youth. What? You're a gem. Hello, John.
Thank you for that intro. You're a gem. How are you doing? We're live here from Sweden right now. So it's so funny. We had most people, it's 10 a.m. on the East Coast. It's 4 p.m. Well, 16 o'clock technically, right? Because 16 o'clock. Yeah, 4 p.m. here. And no, it's just such an honor to be here. And it's ironic. We're actually, we're doing some programs in a bunch of Swedish high schools, like 14, 15-year-olds out here. And it's been amazing. So we usually do a lot of our programs in the States, but this opportunity came up to kind of spread awareness internationally. And now we're doing it. And I'm, if anyone has questions too, I'm an open book. I'm happy to talk about anything. And, I know what it's like. OCD is one of those it's one of those illnesses that I think is very misunderstood. And especially, amongst the general public, a lot of people just think, oh, you have to wash your hands and keep your stuff clean. I mean, if you looked at my car, you looked at my room, it's definitely not clean. I'll tell you that much. And I'll show you. And I think it's just, I'll dive into it a little bit more, obviously, when we share our story. But, anyone out there that, whether it's you who are going through it, a family member, a friend, I hope that you could feel a little bit less alone. And, I really will do whatever I can. And I know Kate actually checked in. Kate works with the JCK Foundation too. And, we're here to do whatever we can to help. And it's amazing being able to work with the Youth Mental Health Project and be able to work with everyone here. So, yeah, we're excited and we're ready to roll.
We are, yes. Thank you, Youth Mental Health Project. This is amazing because we hope there are people here who are going through this situation with OCD. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you're a parent of a child, or perhaps you think you have OCD and you're not sure. So we're here to support everyone. And thanks to Youth Mental Health Project, we can actually have all of these people in one room and feel very strong together. So thanks, Youth Mental Health Foundation, for this. This was amazing. Let's reach out to the people who maybe don't know what OCD is. John, can you tell everyone what it is quickly in a little nutshell?
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I'll do it kind of in layman's terms, how I always talk to the students. So, what OCD is, it's really kind of characterized by these intrusive thoughts that you get, right? So for example, for me, I used to get these horrible thoughts, and thoughts that I didn't want. They're unwanted, intrusive thoughts. Like, for example, I would get a thought, oh, what if my mom's possessed by the devil? And what if this is my fault? And what I would have to do is I would have to do compulsions to kind of counteract that thought. So I would have to say my prayers a certain amount of times. I'd have to touch my nose a certain amount of times because I felt like if I didn't touch my nose or if I didn't say my prayers correctly, something bad was going to happen to my mom or my sister, and it was going to be all my fault. So I think what was really interesting about that is early on, the only way I knew how to cope with these obsessions, so to speak, which were the intrusive thoughts, were by doing these compulsions, right? And the truth is the best way to kind of cope with them was almost by challenging them and actually not giving into the compulsions. And I used to have to do this thing where I go up to my mom and I'd look at her, I go, "You're possessed by the devil. You're possessed by the devil." I'd have to say it to her, look her in the eyes 10 times, and she would look at me, smile, and be like, "No, I'm not." And it would just show that those thoughts didn't have as much control over me as I thought. So, it's a disorder that I think is commonly misunderstood. And, I personally suffer from responsibility obsessions where I think that, if I do something incorrectly or if I do something wrong, something bad's going to happen to people that I love and someone's going to be harmed or something's going to be damaged and it's all my fault. So, I've been living with this now for about 18 years. I'm 31 years old now. And it can be really, really hard at times, and it manifests in different ways. Sometimes it would manifest in relationships. Sometimes it would manifest in myself. So it would always manifest in a lot of different types of ways. So I think that was one thing that was always pretty frustrating for me. But that's kind of what OCD is in a nutshell, if you will.
I'm so grateful that you shared that such intimate story with us. Thank you so much. And is there a time where you pinpointed when you realized that, okay, I'm starting to have obsessive thoughts? Like at what, because you know what I mean? As a kid, how do you even know what obsessive thoughts are? So
Oh,
how does that work for you?
well, first, that's an amazing question, and it's interesting. It all kind of started with me after 9/11. To be completely honest, was when I started to become a relatively anxious young man, so to speak. I was 12 years old at the time, and I remember it was the first time that I thought that, like, the world wasn't safe, and I thought that, oh my God, so something bad can actually happen. And then all of a sudden, well, even back before that, though, just to kind of even reframe it in a different way. So this wasn't necessarily a negative obsession, but I remember when I was 9 years old, I used to have to look for license plates, and I was so obsessed with finding all 50 states of license plates. And I remember I couldn't find the Wyoming license plate, and when I finally found the Wyoming plate, I went nuts. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! I found it! I got it!" But it was interesting. I always would get very passionate about things, and a little bit more obsessive than maybe my mom or my sister or my brother would be. And then for me, though, when it really started to take a negative turn, these thoughts started happening when I was 13 years old. And I remember actually vividly the first time I noticed it. I was saying my nightly prayers, and I was actually out in California on a family trip. And I was saying these nightly prayers. And I just remember I could not stop saying these prayers. I kept thinking, oh my God, if this prayer said the wrong way, my mom's going to be possessed by the devil. So I got to say this again. I got to go over and over and over again until this feels right. And then that started to manifest into going in and out of my classroom. I remember whenever I'd walk into my social studies class, I'd have to go outside and pretend that I left a pen there, because I felt like, if I had a bad thought while I was walking into my social studies class, something bad was going to happen to my teacher, and it was my fault. So it started to slowly manifest itself. Like the first obsessive thoughts that I noticed were probably in like when I was 8, 9 years old. And those first really negative thoughts started happening 6th, 7th grade and started manifesting itself, especially through kind of prayer for me, because I grew up in a relatively religious family. So I would have these obsessions about having to say this prayer the right way. And if it was said the wrong way, oh no, let me do it again. Let me do it again. And it was really damaging because, I was this little guy that was just going through all these things. And I had no idea how to share this, because I felt like if I told anyone, especially my friends, I thought they would think I was crazy and they wouldn't want to hang out with me. And that's why if there's any parents of young children out there that might be going through it, I literally would do anything to help that child feel like, hey, they're safe and they can get through this, because those thoughts are, they don't want to have these thoughts. We don't want to have these tough, intrusive thoughts, but when we're able to kind of accept them as they are, it allows us to really understand, okay, these are our thoughts. This is my OCD speaking. This isn't John Tessitore speaking, right? And I was able to slowly but surely get through them. But that was the initial signs that I had. Went from being like an obsessive kid, kind of healthily obsessive, I guess, if you will, to having those thoughts really, really take over my life.
Wow. And is there any advice or behavior that you noticed that you were doing that perhaps you could share with like a teacher or a parent? You know what I mean? If they're looking for, is there any sort of behaviors that they could look out for?
That's another great question. See, you're coming with the good haymakers. I love these questions. So I think there's a couple things, right? So OCD manifests in a lot of different ways for a lot of people, but I think one of the main things, at least for me, and this could be for a lot of mental illnesses too, but for me with the OCD, I started to withdraw a lot, and I started to not want. I tried to hide a lot of things because I didn't want people to see anything. And then my mom started noticing me touching my nose a lot. So if you see maybe your child, or if you see your student doing a couple of behaviors that might come off as, okay, maybe they're a little bit anxious, maybe they're a little bit obsessive, I would say a lot of times, or maybe if they're going into their locker, right, and they're putting a book away, and you see them kind of sorting through their book a couple of times, and almost, sometimes, we as perfectionists sometimes like to do things a certain amount of times, and there's rituals, but it's interesting because sometimes I almost have like this OCD radar where I can tell if someone's kind of going through something, because I remember that's what I used to do. And a lot of times, if a child's kind of looking around a lot and almost seeing if someone's noticing what they're doing, that can be another sign of saying, okay, maybe this child is actually going through something. And also too, with their friends, if you also notice them maybe getting a little bit frustrated if things aren't done exactly the right way. But mostly too, I think a lot of times, at least for me speaking personally, a lot of times withdrawal, and a withdrawal where it was kind of like, oh, wait, why isn't John over there with his friends? Why is he, touching his nose 8 times when he's playing baseball and trying to hide it? And a lot of times that child is going to try to hide the behavior because of the fact that they're sadly ashamed of it. And I wish I could tell that child, don't be ashamed of this. This is okay. This is just a part of what you're going through. But a lot of times, for me, when I was playing baseball, I would really hide it. And I would remember vividly having to have my helmet on. All my friends would be watching. I have my helmet on, while they're not looking, I turn around and just be like, and then get back up to the plate and say, okay, here I am. Now I can breathe a little bit. So if you see some rituals that are kind of being done, and sometimes being done in the dark, or even if they're telling their sibling or their loved one, hey, can you not do that? Or can you not stand over there? And it almost seems like, why is he saying that? There might be some anxiety or some OCD going on there in a sense. And obviously OCD does manifest. It is an anxiety disorder. So it's a way that, for me, that's how anxiety would manifest itself with these obsessive thoughts and obsessive behaviors. So again, too, if you might see your child, kind of, saying these things that you might look at them and say, wait a second, why does my son care that, his sister is over there doing that specific thing? Maybe that's not something he should really care about. It could be maybe because he's having a bad intrusive thought, or she's having an intrusive thought that, hey, if my sibling's there, something bad might happen. So a lot of things like that where, those rituals get kind of turned around a little bit in a sense.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of
Wow.
course.
And how was this like for you in school? I would really love if you could talk about it, and then maybe explain to kids who are possibly listening that are going through this, what they could do to make that a better experience for them.
That's a great question. So in school, it was very, very frustrating, but I also got very lucky. And I'll tell you kind of a little backstory as to what I mean by that. So in school, it manifested itself in so many different ways where a lot of my behaviors were changing. I was getting in a lot of trouble at school, to be completely honest, because I did not know how to deal with these thoughts, right? So particularly if we flash back, I can't believe 7th grade was 18 years ago now. But if we flash back 18 years when I was just, 13 years old, I just remember so vividly having to always, do something, whether it was a ritual or whether it was, if my friend said, hey, John, can do this and we'll pay you $5. I just wanted to fit in a lot. And I think in school for me, one of the hardest things too, and my mom actually reminded me of it because it was really hard. I almost put it away in the back of my memory because it was so hard. I remember school reading was almost impossible for me. Summer reading, I remember so vividly. It took me sometimes 7-8 minutes to read a page in a book because I had an intrusive thought about a word. So I'd see a word, I'd have to go back and say, I can't turn the page until this word feels good. And I got so darn frustrated. It was so sad for my mom to see because she's like, oh, John is such a smart and sweet boy, but he can't turn the page on this. And I would try to explain why. And I'd be like, okay, let me challenge myself. And there were times where I'd go and I would get through it. I'd have those, those good hours, but then, it would be hard. And then it would go, it would turn backwards at those random times. So, one thing that really helped was my buddy, John Kelly. So I'll tell you guys a really inspiring story about John. So John was my older brother, Paul's best friend. And I love telling kids this, and it always seems to make them smile. I'll never forget, we were at this family barbecue, right? And this is when, I had just first gotten diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder. I'll never forget, John comes up to me, he goes, dude, I hear you have OCD. And I was like, wait, what? Like who told you that? How do you know this? He goes, dude, our parents talk. And I was like, but why would my mom tell you this? Like, I don't get it. Like, why would you tell her this? No one's supposed to know this. He goes, John, it's okay. I'm here to let you know that I have OCD too. I'm going to help you get through this. And I remember my jaw was like, dropped to the floor. I was like, well, you have these intrusive thoughts about like the devil possessing your mom. And he goes, dude, all the time. And he gave me this big hug and he said, John, I'm always going to be here for you and I'm going to help you get through this. And what was amazing about that was in the 7th and 8th grade, the summer actually going into 8th grade. And for the first time, it made me feel so much less isolated. And the thing about John Kelly that was so amazing is he was the person I always looked up to. My older brother, he's an amazing guy, but he was a bully when we were growing up. You know, I was the middle child, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna. That's just how he dealt with it, right? And it's okay, I forgive him. But it's one of those things where, you know, John was always the guy I looked up to, and when he's telling me that he has this OCD and I could live this happy, healthy, and beautiful life even while suffering from this, it was incredible, and I felt empowered for the first time, and that helped me a lot too in school, because whenever I was having these hard rituals, whenever I was going through something, I would have this conversation with him, and I would talk with him, and I would let him know how I was feeling and what I was feeling. And he would let me know, John, this is what I went through. This is normal. And I would leave those conversations feeling like I was Superman, feeling like I could do anything and I wasn't going to let this hurt me. So I think what was really important about that too, what was amazing was not only, you know, was I feeling less isolated, but I was actually getting tips and pointers. He was like, John, challenge those thoughts, right? You know, you could, you know, don't, when you want to walk through the door, keep walking, right? And, you know, I went to cognitive behavioral therapy, which really helped. And Miss Battersby, I love Miss Battersby to death. She was my 7th grade counselor in middle school at Dobseri, and she would kind of teach me to do these things. So between Miss Battersby, between John Kelly, and also between my actual therapist that I would go to once a week, I would do cognitive behavioral therapy to counteract some of these thoughts and to challenge these thoughts and to regain some control. So there were some hard points though still where, you know, it still was hard because none of my quote unquote friends besides John knew. So I was kind of feeling very isolated, and I still was doing whatever it kind of took to fit in. So I think any parent out there or any teacher out there that might be struggling with the student, you know, remember there's no bad kids out there. I really, really firmly believe there are no bad kids. Sometimes kids are very confused, and sometimes they don't know how to deal with these anxieties and insecurities that they're going through. And Miss Battersby and John and my therapist really helped me face those anxieties and insecurities head on and realize, okay, I'm not a bad kid. Even though I'm getting D's in middle school, doesn't mean I'm not smart, and doesn't mean I can't, you know, be successful. It doesn't mean I'm not successful and I'm not a good kid. And I think that was something that was really, really important for me. So, you know, I think in school, right, just trying to meet that student where they are, right? And trying to let that student know that, hey, even though they might be not getting the best grades, they might be acting up in class, as a teacher, let them know that hey, you're here for them and that you want to be there to learn with them. What can you do to help them? As a parent, you know, I'm a big fan of obviously being compassionate, but don't be afraid to, you know, let your child know, hey, you know, we want to help you get through this. Like what is going on, in a sense. And I think it was that mix of a little bit of tough love, but also very compassionate love, saying, hey, John, you know, we want to see you do well, which is why we're wondering what's going on. So I think school was hard early on, but then I got some structure. I went to a different high school. I got a little bit of structure. And between that and between going to a therapist, that really, really helped. So I think, you know, just to kind of reiterate that, you know, don't give up on those kids. And if you're a child going through it right now, hey, I promise you, don't give up. You're not a bad kid. You're not a failure. You're the furthest thing from a failure. I guarantee you're more empathetic than most of your friends, and you're going to do amazing things in this world. And, you know, be nice to yourself when you're having these intrusive thoughts. Be nice to yourself when you're going through that anxiety, because it's hard. And sometimes we're our own worst enemies and our own biggest critics, because we want so badly to see our parents and our loved ones happy, because, you know, that's a part of our OCD. For me, I felt so much responsibility towards them. So when I was acting up, I got an extra layer of guilt, right? So I was like, damn it, you know, pardon my language, I'm just being real. But I remember that's how I would always feel. I was like, I don't want to see my mom cry. I don't want to see my sister cry when she sees me walking to the principal's office every day. So being kind, being compassionate, understanding that people have your back is so important. But, you know, school.
Hold on, guys. I think we've got just a little technical difficulty. I just hope it isn't me.
Sorry, Ashlee, I think I lost you for a second. I'm back
No,
though.
it's okay.
I got the Wi-Fi back. It just went away real quick. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's totally cool. No, no, no. Thank you. That was such helpful and useful information. And one more thing, John, OCD sometimes has a lot of negative words attached to it. Do you think you could provide us with like maybe 3 words, 4 words of positive that we could associate OCD with?
I love Ashley. I love that question because, first of all, that's such a good point. There's so much negative connotation at times associated with it. Here's a couple words I think are really important. So for C, compassionate. I think many people with OCD are so compassionate and will, because they know what it's like to suffer, they'll do anything to help anyone else. E, even though it's not an O or a D, empathetic. A lot of people who suffer from OCD are very empathetic and want to do and want to see what's best for the people that they love. So I would say compassionate, empathetic, and really, I really think that empathetic and compassionate are 2 big words that describe a lot of people who are going through this, and a lot of people who might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the OCD, and also people with OCD. They tend to understand what other people are going through, and they tend to be so kind. And that was what John Kelly was like when I described John, and very loyal to people with OCD are very, very loyal. At least for the most part, for people that I've met that go through this, because for me, I'm the type of person that I'll do anything for the people that I love, and that loyalty is something that I take a lot of pride in, and I think that kindness, of being kind to other people because you see what they're going through and you see those daily struggles that they might be fighting, and then being empathetic towards that and trying to relate to them and do what we can do to make them feel better. So I think that compassionate, empathetic, kindness, loyalty, loving. People with OCD tend to love with all their hearts. They really, really do, because you go through so much, and it's one of those things you just want to see people do well. So you really do put your heart on your sleeve a lot. And I think people with OCD will do anything for the people that they love, and even for people that they don't love, they'll do a lot for. So I think those are 5 things to remember. You're a beautiful person. You're compassionate. You're loving. You're empathetic. And even when those dark thoughts try to tell you otherwise, remember that. And I promise you, that is 100% the truth. And those negative thoughts that the OCD is going to try to tell you, that's not true. And that's the thing. One thing my therapist told me at an early age that really helped me was separate that OCD from who you are. You're not those intrusive thoughts, John. You're not those intrusive thoughts, Ashley. You're not those intrusive thoughts, whoever might be going through this. Those aren't you. That's what your illness is trying to tell you. And when you're able to kind of frame it in that way, oh my God, it was a game changer for me. That helped me so much when I was 13, 14 years old. And now just remembering around myself, hey, I am compassionate. I am a good person, and I am a loyal and hardworking. A lot of people with OCD work very hard. But I love that question. Hopefully anyone out there listening right now understands that those adjectives are who you are, not the mean things that the OCD is going to try to tell you.
That was so beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad. It's true though, because I just don't want anyone out there, who's suffering from this, to think this is this horrible thing that's gonna hurt you forever. You're gonna find ways to live with this. I promise you that. And it's not always going to be easy. There's going to be times where you feel really overwhelmed and you feel like that box is shutting in on you. But, like I tell all the students in the programs that we do, pain really has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's the same thing with those obsessions. When you're in the middle of it, sometimes you think it's never going to end, but they do. And when you get through it, you feel so much more resilient. And then you could share that experience with other people. And that is the beauty of life, right? Is, knowing that those dark moments, even when they feel like they're not going to end, they will. And I know for you parents out there who maybe have a child suffering, I know how hard that can be. And sometimes it might feel like, oh, darn it, like, are they ever going to get through this? Give it a little bit of time. Understand that, it is hard. And right now it might be tough, but it comes in time. For me, it took 4 or 5 years to really get there. And then, it wasn't a linear thing. In college, things got pretty tough for me because I had that experience with John and losing John, and also having to go through my own kind of crisis where I wasn't taking care of my OCD. So it started to manifest itself in suicidal ideations. And that was a really scary thing. But again, when you get through that, you're able to use that experience to tell those other people who might be going through that, hey, I promise you, and you could tell them with the enthusiasm, not with fear. Say, hey, I promise you, you're going to get better. And you are. It's just getting through those dark moments that sometimes seem impossible, but they do end. I promise you.
That's so great. And I kind of want to touch on a little bit, John, like I'm sure having OCD causes really hard communication because how
Oh
do
yeah.
you explain yourself, and how can you know what I mean? Like these are really, really, really intense things. Do you have
Yeah.
any advice on how people can improve their communication from all sides, like from the person who has OCD, from the parent, from anyone?
Actually, I have to say, and I know that I'm hyping you up, but because it's true, that's one of the most important and best questions that I've ever heard in an interview. Because a lot of times people don't understand the challenges of communication, and for me, I have to tell you, communication was really tough at times because especially in romantic relationships, communication can be really hard because how do you explain to your partner that you're having intrusive thoughts, right? And how do you explain that? And how do you explain it in a way where, people feel, comfortable hearing those thoughts? And for me, a lot of times I would get ashamed of these thoughts. I'm like, okay, I can't explain this because if I explain this the wrong way, something bad's going to happen. And if I explain this the wrong way, people aren't going to understand what I'm going through. So I think, communication with OCD is critical, and I think it starts too with trust, right? So a lot of times I don't tell everyone what goes on in my head because I feel like, what if someone thinks I'm crazy? What if someone thinks that these intrusive thoughts, because I mean the thoughts that you get with OCD are so taboo, and that's the hardest part, because OCD will try to take away the things that you love the most, right? And I think one thing that's really frustrating about that is, like, for me, it was my mom and sister, right? So it would try to latch on to that thing where if I don't say these prayers the right way, they're going to be possessed by the devil. A lot of times when you're in a relationship, well, you love your partner the most, and it's going to try to latch on, well, are you a bad person? Do you not want to be with them? Are you going to cheat on them? And obviously those are things that you would never do, but the intrusive thoughts will find ways to manifest themselves. So I think two things, right? So about communication, about kind of accepting those thoughts. When those thoughts come, right? I think what's very important is, even though it's really, really hard because it moves a million miles an hour, saying this is my OCD again. It's trying to trick me. It's trying to do what it does best at times, and trying to trick me into thinking that I'm going to do something that I don't want to do. But you actually have the power. And then, what's really beautiful is when you do tell your partner, or when you do tell your mom about these thoughts, and you're very honest and vulnerable with them and say, hey, this is a hard thing for me to say. And I just want you to know that it's because I love you so much that I'm having these thoughts. And you sometimes people aren't going to fully understand it, but when you frame it that way, typically those people that are meant to be in your life, they understand that, and they'll listen, and they'll say, wait, oh my God, like now I get this. I get how hard these thoughts can be. And the reason you're having these thoughts is because you actually love me so much. And you're like, exactly. So I think a lot of times is framing it, especially when maybe you're with siblings or you're with parents, right? Or in a romantic partnership with a friend, any sort of relationship that means a lot to you. I think the best way that I've been able to frame it, and that I've seen from my own personal experiences, is letting them know, the reason why I'm having these thoughts, A, it's not your fault to that other person. It's also saying, hey, it's not your fault. I just care about you so much. And OCD tends to manifest itself in these ways to try to take away the things that I love the most. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because when you're able to have those conversations, those thoughts start to slowly but surely go away, because you feel safe. You feel comfortable. You feel like, oh my God, this big burden, this big secret that I felt like I was carrying is actually being accepted. And for those parents, and for those maybe significant others or siblings of those who suffer with OCD, try your best. And I know sometimes it might not be easy, because it is a lot to hear. I get that. But try your very best to understand how much courage that took the person suffering to tell you that, in a sense, and understand that the more that you can accept them and kind of give them that big hug, the more those thoughts start to slowly but surely go away. And a lot of my best friends, and the people that I care about the most, my family members, people that I just, that are my tribe, so to speak, right? They're able to kind of hear these thoughts and look at me and say, John, that's the OCD. My mom and my sister are really, really good with that. Like it's because they've been with me, from day one. Right. And my friends are relatively good with it, but my mom and my sister are the best at it, because, they've seen it from start to finish. I'm like, John, I promise you, this is the OCD manifesting itself. I'm not going to let it do that to you. We're going to challenge these thoughts together. So I think also kind of coming at it from a team aspect and team environment, with communication is really important. So if you are suffering, if you're going through it, I think the best way to do is to just always try to be very honest, even as hard as it is, but try to frame it in a way it's like, hey, I know this might be hard to hear, but the reason that I'm having these thoughts are because I do care about you so much. And I do care about, our relationship so much. And, OCD is really frustrating. And I hate it for that it tries to do that to people. And that's why any kid that's going through it right now, listen, I'm going to try to grab that out from you. Like you don't deserve that. So I hope that helps.
You already know that I like John and I are friends. So behind the scenes, I'm his hype man all the time because I think he's so special. And if you just heard this 30 minutes of this conversation, you obviously know why. But you, my friend, I am so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That means the world to me. That means the
No,
world
it's
to
just
me.
great to see how you've just embraced with what, has been put in front of you, and now you're like changing this up and you're fighting for the other people and children who are going through this, and you're making a mark out there in the world. Can you tell everyone a little bit more about the JCK Foundation?
Oh, sorry, I was muted again. Absolutely. So the JCK Foundation obviously is something that really, really means the world to me and to a lot of people in our community. So, the JCK Foundation was started in honor of my best friend, John Kelly. And John Kelly kind of took me under his wing when I was going through my OCD. And like I was saying before, he was my brother Paul's best friend growing up. And, he made me feel so safe. He made me feel so loved. He made me feel just so special. And he did anything to help me. And that same support, love, and comfort that he gave to me is what we strive to give to any student, any person listening right now, any person that we touch, and any community member. Just because I think what's so special about JCK is that we try to make mental health approachable, and we try to make it real and understand that, hey, everyone's story is a little bit different. And I think what's so important about that too is everyone's story may be different, but we can all relate to certain things, right? And we can all kind of go through these things together. And we just want to make people feel comfortable. We want to make people feel really loved, and we want to make people feel really just safe in their own skin, to be honest, because there's so much tough things going on in the world, whether so many people, especially the youth, go through so much, whether it's a mental issue, whether it's a family issue, whether it's a personal issue, we're all fighting these things together, and we live in a hard enough world as it is. And JCK really tries to just make it easier for people. We try to make it easier for people in our programs. We try to make it easier for people, just during our events and every day, really. We just try to make the world a little bit of a better place for people. So what we really do, like our hands-on work, what we take a lot of pride in. I know Kate's here too. Kate and Caroline are our program managers, and they're incredible. They're wonderful. What we do is we go into high schools, colleges, and middle schools particularly, and we do the Legends program, where we do a lot of faculty and student workshops, where people feel like they can share their story and feel very valued, and not feel like someone is going to judge them or not be there for them. And we'll tell them stories, we'll give them ways to have conversations, we'll give them resources that are particularly from that school. And then after that, we'll actually do group activities where students actually talk about these things. And then what we'll do is they'll share this like big board of what they wrote down, and they'll share it to the rest of the class, and we'll give them a huge standing ovation, like, that's right, you did it, you had the conversation. So I think one thing that's really important that we take a lot of pride in is giving students and faculty members just a place to breathe and a place to have these conversations. Because I'm not a mental health professional, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just someone with a lot of lived experience, and we try to connect people to those resources. We try to be that kind of line of defense where, hey, you could see a program, you could understand where we're coming from, and you could feel a little bit less alone, and maybe feel your own story in one of our stories. And then you get some time to practice these conversations. Then you also get resources from the school and from the community, and then we can connect you to those next level resources. We can walk you down to the school counselor's office. We can help you get on a phone with a therapist. We can help you get on that right track. So, we take a lot of pride in just doing what we can to make people feel comfortable and people feel safe. So we're really proud of our Legends program, and that's what we're doing in Sweden right now. It's pretty cool. We're going international now, but we really will try to do whatever we can to help people.
This is so great, and what a great foundation, and just leaving a legacy and helping kids. This is so beautiful. I would just love if you could kind of like give us a little insight on those days and what's going on. Do you ever have kids during, while you're there, after you tell your story, kind of open up to you or come up to you and say, I have OCD or I'm actually going through this? I know you do.
Ashley, that's a great question. And to be honest, that's my favorite part of the work that we do. And I always tell the students when I'm sharing my story, my favorite part of all this work is when like you're able to look a student in the eye, or even a faculty member or whoever's there, and they feel hope, and they feel like connected to your story, because some of these kids have been hiding this for their whole life. They've been misunderstood their whole life. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, like this is what I go through. And even recently, I'll tell you a story about here in Sweden. I wasn't sure how it was going to go over, because obviously, I'm coming from New York. I don't know. I always get a little insecure. I'm like, okay, hopefully they like this. Hopefully they relate to this. Hopefully they feel supported from this. And a kid came up to me at the end and told me about their experience with OCD and their experience just with, their family, and how, how beautiful this was to know that someone is there and isn't alone. And he was telling me how his brother is his best friend and he helps him through it. And he's starting to go to therapy a little bit. So I think my favorite part of this whole program is seeing those kids. And typically you'll get a couple after each presentation. They'll just share a little bit about their own life. And you know what I love even more? It's not even about OCD anymore for a lot of these kids, right? Some will talk about, like one was telling me about how, they just came out as transgender to their parents, and they were really suffering with that because their parents didn't really get it. But, they felt like they were able to feel a little bit more comfortable. And we were able to talk about, hey, maybe here are some ways that we can have conversations with our friends and maybe our brother to help us talk to our parents about this, in a sense. And just hearing the things that they go through and seeing the hope they have afterward and saying, wow, I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like I have someone that I can relate to. And it gives them that little extra push to maybe go to the school counselor, or maybe open up to their friends, maybe open up to their family and have those conversations that can eventually be life-changing and empowering for them. So, I just think, I have a lot of different kind of stories of people that have come up, but they all, like, to me, they're all special in a different way, because, anytime a kid has the courage just to share and, even like put ourselves, like if we flash back, when we were 14, 15, how hard it was to share, with I love that they don't feel like we're strangers. That's the point, but, they just met us an hour and a half ago. And then they'll come up and share with us. Like we were at Putnam Valley, and this was on Friday actually, and a kid was talking about how he wants to be a movie director and he has OCD, and we did an exposure together, and he was like, I knew I could dominate this. And that was like, oh my God, like that's what I live for. And I don't know, it's just, you're gonna get me emotional on this, but it's just like, it's and even like being here, right? Like when I was in my darkest moments, I never thought I would be able to even travel alone to Sweden and be here and having a beautiful conversation here. It's almost like I'm conquering my OCD too, and the kids help me. They really, really do, and the community helps me. So, being able to hear those stories, to me, is what it's all about. And seeing them and hearing afterwards that they continue to get help and they continue to make an example in their community, that stuff means the world to me. That's what it's all about.
You're a legend.
No,
love
you
it.
are. You are. We got the hat. I got to send you guys these Legends hats. We got to send all the listeners the Legends hats too.
We need Legends hats. We are all legends. If you're here today,
that's
listening,
a fact.
You're a legend. Thank you for
that
being
is
here.
That is a fact. And it means the world to us for you being here too.
John, you're the best. Before we open up the floor, guys, to questions, do you have a parting, I guess, speech to maybe someone who's listening to this, who's not sure how to move forward? Maybe they know they have OCD. Maybe they're not ready to accept it. Maybe they don't know how to say it to their parents. Maybe the parents don't know how to accept it. Do you have any last words of encouragement and hope to get the help?
Ashlee, these questions are the best. You're on fire right now. It's amazing. So I would say, all right, so last words. I'll try not to ramble too much. I'll try to keep it pretty succinct. But so I think if you're feeling isolated right now, one, I want you to know that you aren't alone. And I want you to know that people are proud of you. And I'm personally proud of you, even if I might not have met you. And I mean that. And I know it might sound cliche, but I tell the students this all the time. What you're going through and the battle that you're fighting isn't easy, right? And sometimes you might be fighting it on your own, but you're here. and you're talking about it and you're starting to say, hey, I do want help. You know how much courage that takes? You know how amazing that is of you? And I want you to know that you have an incredible soul. That the pain right now that you might be feeling might be overwhelming right now, but I promise you it's not going to last forever. You're going to be able to live a beautiful life. And there's going to be moments when it's tough. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, life isn't always easy, but that's okay. That is okay. That's what we have community for, right? And there is a community of people that love you. There's people that will help you. And, you know, even if you don't get that reassurance from some of the people that you might love the most, just understand that there are people who understand you, and you're going to find those people. And hopefully, you know, we can help be those people for you. And hopefully, you know, whether it's us with JCK, anyone at the Youth Mental Health Project, you, Ashlee, anyone else listening, there are people here that are here to help. And I think too, if you're a parent too, and you're going through this, first of all, I want to let you know how proud I am of you as a parent. Like, sometimes parents, you guys have so much pressure on you. And I see it all the time. And, you know, I give my mom and my dad so much credit because, you know, you stayed patient with me. You stayed patient with me, but you never gave up on me. And you showed me that I had a beautiful soul. And I think as parents, reminding our kids how much you love them, reminding them how much you are proud of them. And even if you're feeling frustrated with them, and even if you feel like this fight is overwhelming and you've tried everything, continue to remind them how much you love them and how much you believe in them, because believing in them is critical. And even if you feel like you're losing that hope and you're starting to not believe, I promise you, hey, I'm going to tell you as parents, I believe in you. And, you know, it's tricky because we always want our kids to be happy. And I'm not a parent myself. I have a couple of friends who are parents and that I've talked to a little bit about this. But the pressure that you guys have on yourself is a lot. So be nice to yourself too, as parents. You know, don't be afraid to talk it out with someone else, and don't be afraid to use therapy yourself, and don't be afraid to get that help that you deserve too, because this is not always an easy battle. But I promise you, the more that we can show those children that we believe in them, and the more that we can take a deep breath and say, I'm going to take it day by day today. You know, my child might not be doing good today. Doesn't mean he's not going to be doing good tomorrow. He might not be doing good for a year, 2 years, but I promise you, you know, when you continue to show that belief, really, really powerful things happen. And also, you know, a lot of times with OCD, sometimes our children who have OCD might say, oh, no, you can't do that. That's triggering to my OCD. We got to challenge our kids a little bit too. You know, don't be, you know, my mom, one of the best things my mom and dad did was when I didn't want to go to school and I said it was too much, they took me and I went and I showed up. You know, I think teaching our kids the power of showing up is really, really important, because sometimes we don't want to show up and then we make habits of not showing up. One thing, Bobby Reiser, he's an amazing guy. He's one of my mentors. He always told me whenever I was going through it, hey, John, just show up. Just show up. And I know that might not always be the easiest thing to hear, but try to get, and sometimes our kids are gonna give us backlash, but hey, let's try to get, you know, just continue to show up and, you know, continue to push. Hey, I believe in you, and you might not want to be here, but hey, I'm with you. I'm your parent. I'm with you. We're going to show up together if we have to. I might miss work for you, and I'm going to show up today for you. So just understanding that, yes, as parents, we have responsibility, but, you know, as the sufferer too, as someone who suffers with OCD, you know, we have responsibility too, to listen and to challenge ourselves a little bit as well.
Yay, John Tessitore, everyone. Yay.
Tessitore. We're in Europe, so we could do that pronunciation of it.
I'm
Amen.
so proud of you. And this is what I love to showcase. And even on my podcast, because this is like everything that you just said was about making the happy choice. Like, you need to really look at it all, guys, and just know that you have the choice to be happy. So find the light. Sometimes in a tunnel that can be so dark, you can do it. You can find it, and if you grasp it and hold on to it and pull it and go happy, happy, happy every single time, you're going to see a huge change. I'm going to get to these questions. I don't want people to log off without knowing. Okay, so
awesome.
Hello, everyone. Please ask us your questions if you have any. The first question is, do you have any advice for parents who are helping an adult child who has autism and OCD? Have you ever worked with people on the spectrum?
That's actually a really good question. So to answer that, so directly, not directly, so to speak, but we actually have just recently, one of the conversations we had with the child was someone who was on the spectrum. And, you know, I don't want to give the wrong advice, but I'll tell you what what we did. And actually, Kate was there with us. This actually happened on Friday, ironically. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So from kind of a personal experience, not a clinical experience, you know, I think a lot of times too with OCD, obviously, as you know, things become very, very obsessive, right? And sometimes I think a big thing is trying to manage those obsessions into something positive, right? So for example, right, this one particular guy we were working with, he was talking about how he loved, like we said, writing comic books and writing movies, and saying, hey, you know, maybe let's do a lot of focus on those comic books, a lot of focus on those movies. And as a parent saying, hey, you know, how did the comic book come today, right? How did that go today? How's the writing going from that? Maybe they'll say, oh, you know, I'm having a tough day today, and you know, I didn't write the comic. Oh, well, why not? Like, let's try. You know, you're so good at that. You're really good at that. And when you put your passion towards that, you do amazing things. And I also think too is, you know, so many people that I've worked with, just friends that I know, and you know, siblings who are on the spectrum, they have just this amazing talent. When they focus on something, they can, you know, just do incredible things. You know, one of my buddies, he actually, what he ended up doing is he had an obsession really with bus companies, right? He loved the Beeline bus. He ended up working for the Beeline bus. And that was a story that still, he was my camper too. He was just like the best kid in the world. So, you know, trying to kind of cultivate their spirits, right? Trying to kind of cultivate those things that they really like to do, and giving them hope and belief that, hey, you can make a career out of this. You can do something with this. Because for me, it's like, you know, for me, my obsession was trying to help people, so to speak. And, you know, I worked at ESPN before I did the JCK Foundation, but, you know, my parents' belief in me to say, hey, I can do this, kind of, I got so obsessed with making this work, in a sense, that I just kind of gave my all to it, and understand that when you do commit to these things, amazing things can happen. So, you know, in terms of like personal advice and from people that I've worked with, I think that's the best advice that I can personally give. But I would love to try to connect you to, you know, I could also talk to, you know, Mr. Reiser, who's a licensed therapist and who has worked, I believe he's worked with people who have OCD that have been on the spectrum before, and I could reach out to him and see if he can help as well. But just from my own personal experiences, trying to cultivate their passion and making sure that they can believe in themselves, that they can do something. Hey, you can make a career out of this. Hey, you know, you are so smart. Like, look at these things that you're really good at. And trying to recognize those things in them that they are good at, and telling them that they're really good at that. And when they're saying, no, I'm not good at, no, you are good at that. Don't tell yourself that. You're really darn good at that. So yeah, let's make sure you do your writing today. If it is something, if like for this particular boy, he likes writing comic books, you do your writing today. Letting them know that you do believe in them and that they can do amazing things, I think is really, really important. But I hope that helps. I hope that helps. And also I hope, you know, hopefully I could connect you with another therapist too, that might be able to help even more.
That was such beautiful advice. It helped me as well. Goodness. I do need to say that myself. Jeez, that was great. You know, it's so great when you can walk away from something like this and be like, I can actually apply all of this to my own life. That's so beautiful. And that's what connects us all together. It's like we're all human, which is so great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Here's another question. We hope that answered your question, but we'll help you guys get extra resources when we're finished here. The next question: did John ever have to take meds, and was it helpful?
It's a great question. So, and also too, before I forget, if you want to shoot me an email, I don't know if we put the email in the chat or anything, but if you want to reach out afterwards too, and, you know, follow up on any of these questions, my email is john, JOHN @jckfoundation.org. And I'd be more than happy to chat on the side if you want to set up a time to just call. You know, I'm always happy to talk, or, you know, if you're in the Westchester area, get coffee, whatever it may be, I'm happy to help in any way. So that question about meds, very good question. So there's two answers to that. So when I was in 7th grade, we tried meds very quickly. I actually didn't know I was on meds, and my mom said it changed my personality a little bit, so she took me off of it. But that's a really good question. I personally haven't really used medication, and that's not to say that you shouldn't. For me, it was one of those things where I don't know if just my personality was like, I wanted to say, hey, I can do this, you know, maybe I could do it with therapy and having these conversations. But to be completely honest, there have been times where my therapist had recommended going on medication. And I have thought about actually going on medication. Even now, I still think about potentially doing that to help me manage my anxiety when it does get overwhelming. So to answer that question, I think there were times where it helped not being on medication, but I'm not going to sit here and say that, hey, I think whatever works for you, I just want to see it work. And I have, again, a ton of friends that have been on meds. So personally, again, I haven't been on medication, but I've actually thought about maybe even jumping on it more recently to help myself. So I am firmly believer of I am not against medication at all. I think it's something that can totally work. And I think it's something that is a great, I also think just, being able to use medication while getting therapy and while having conversations with friends and while, going outside and taking a walk and doing other things that you love, I think a balance is always important. So I think when we think about mental health resources, and we talk about this with students all the time, what works for someone may not work for another person. But when we kind of try to balance it out and say, okay, well, maybe listening to a podcast, like listening to Ashlee's podcast, that might be a great way for a student for a child to feel a little bit better about what they're going through. Going to therapy, doing cognitive behavioral therapy, that might be really helpful. Having a conversation with a friend or someone that is going through a similar experience, that might be super helpful. And then medication, that also might be super helpful. So a lot of times what I have seen is when you kind of do a little bit of everything, it does help. And you have those resources, and you have those barriers and those resources that do work. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, so I haven't personally used it besides that one time in 7th grade that I didn't know about. But I would say, I'm definitely for anything that helps us.
Yeah, I love that. And I kind of want to add on to that and just tell people, have fun diving into your journey of finding what works for you. Like, that's such a beautiful thing to be able to know what works for you, what makes you feel good, and to be able to have those feelings of, oh yeah, I do feel good, and this was awesome, and this was great. So sometimes it could be a little bit of a rough journey, up and down. Is it working? Is it not working? But have fun with it. Find the happiness in it. Find the love in it. Find the beauty in helping yourself. And yeah, John, that was
Great.
such a great answer.
Ashlee, that's a great piece of feedback that you said, though. Find the beauty in helping yourself is, being nice to yourself throughout the process. I'll be honest, like, just fully transparent, I tend to be super hard on myself. And I'm working on that actively every single day. And the more that I've been able to work on that, I think the easier life has become when I do struggle and I say, you know what, I'm a human, and we're all humans. I tend to put these unrealistic expectations on myself. And I'm sure a lot of our children and even us, we probably do that too. So try to find the beauty in all of it and be nice to yourself with that, because, sometimes we're our own worst enemies with that. And, kind of love yourself the same way you love your child, in a sense. I think that's really, really important. And a kid said it yesterday. I just wanted to share it. One of the students, he said, he pretends now he gives him the same love that his father gives him. And I was like, man, that is powerful. And it's helped him a lot, because a lot of times we do suffer a little bit from that own lack of self-love. And when we actively try to do that, it helps. And, whether it's taking a nap or going to Sweden and doing programs rather than just doing it next door, stuff like this helps. And, just remember that.
Yeah. We want to thank everyone who sat through and listened to us. We really appreciate you being here. We also want to say thanks to Youth Mental Health Project. I just want everyone who's in this room to know that you're not alone. We are all here for you, whether it's Youth Mental Health Project, whether it's for myself, or whether it's by John. There's 3 people, well, 2 people in one organization. And John, there's so many people who are available for you guys. We love you. We just want you to be better. We just want to see happiness. Thank you, Youth Mental Health Project. John, so excited, so grateful for you. You are my forever friend. You're a legend.
Always,
You're out there in
always.
Sweden. You're doing amazing things. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being so vulnerable. It was such an honor to do this, and we just appreciate everyone here today.
Thank you all so much. We love you, and we have your back. And, we mean that from the bottom of our hearts. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Legends out.
Legends out. See you later. Bye-bye.